And to my surprise, this movie is getting so much praise. And I genuinely not trying to be mean or anything. Like, hello and welcome to Embodying Mystical Mac. I'm Mac, and if you're new here, thank you so much for joining. If you are returning, thank you so much for coming back. And if you are listening on the podcast, thank you so much for supporting that medium. If at some point you want to hop over to YouTube just to see my what shall I say, representative garments of today's film that we'll be talking about, the first Omen. I think I did a pretty good job at emulating the outfit that Margaret wore for one of the scenes, so come check that out if you'd like. And if you're already on YouTube, you can see that I have the only thing that I own that has anything to do with religion, I suppose. I also felt it was appropriate to use the book Hellbent as a little pedestal for her. If you're religious, please do not, this is not serious, okay? This is literally me just being creative and creating some set design that has to do with our movie today. And if you have seen the movie, that hell and jackals of hell and the like are involved here, so Hellbent, I figured that was appropriate. And then of course, exalted, because she is, and protected in the chakra beads, the mala beads here, we have my Santa Clara. So she and I and this book are representing today for the first Omen. Okay. Whew. That was a long-winded intro. How do we even get started? First of all, I wasn't even gonna make this video, but I am in a bit of a motivation slump due to, just life reasons and just having very little time to dedicate to my content as of late in order to prioritize, making an income. So the reviews have been something that I occasionally get a little bit of my old procrastination on. And as of late, it really hasn't been intentional. It's really just been, I've been trying to rest and just fill my cup as much as I can. It's also why I've kind of slacked on doing my ACOTAR notes recently, because when I'm reading, I've been trying to just read things that light me up a little bit, because it's just been low energy over here. So I wasn't even gonna make this review, this commentary on the first Omen, but I was just compelled, because after I watched it, and both my partner and I were both kind of okay. that was our reaction. And if you liked it, this is no shade to you. This is all my opinion. So if you really liked this and you don't want to hear somebody talk about it in a way that isn't all that positive, then please bow out. I'm not trying to yuck your, for real. But we were just kind of left, I don't know, not satisfied as far as a horror movie experience goes. And so of course I do the thing that I do every time, usually after I watch a horror movie, or any movie for that matter, except maybe the movies that I intend to review. Like I said, I did not intend to review this. Typically, if I do intend to review it, I try to not watch anybody else's reviews, because I want everything to just be my own thoughts. And to my surprise, this movie is getting so much praise. And I genuinely not trying to be mean or anything. My commentaries are just my honest opinion, and I just don't understand the praise that it's getting. Because, okay, I'll just go into that when we get to that point. But I suppose, let me just give a spoiler-free review. Oh wait, let me finish the thought. ADHD got a hold of me there for a second. Didn't intend on making the review, ended up deciding to make this review. Literally, I was inspired by the fact that there was one video of people who saw the things that I saw in it and were talking about it, to every, I feel 3 to 5 videos of people who were just oh my gosh, this is the best horror movie of the year, or something of that sort. So I was inspired, and I literally just the next day, I believe, just got down with my little notebook and just wrote out the outline for this video, my notes, because I just couldn't believe it. So as a spoiler-free review, here we go. It's visually well done, like I will give it that. That is one of the pros, 100%. And the acting is good. I commend the actress who plays Margaret. There are moments where I feel that what's happening is kind of goofy, but she is committing, like she is going for it. And as an actress myself, I can absolutely not hate on that. Like I 100% appreciate that. So, and the acting from everybody else was good as well. So, especially the girl who plays Carlita, considering she's younger, I thought she did a very good job. So those two things are well done. For me, the story is where the issues lie, but the former, or rather the previous things that I just mentioned might be enough to, you know, get you on board with the movie. I genuinely feel like the couple things I just mentioned, in addition to some more details that I'll go into after the spoiler warning, I attribute the fact that it's getting so praised to the fact that it is visually very well done and that the acting is really good in it. I really do appreciate that. And I feel like a lot of people are appreciating that too, and it's, you know, when it does it for you on certain levels, we are all different and each of us have different things that we will let slide or that we will notice that will kind of dampen a movie experience for us. So if visually well done and good acting and, you know, like a decent plot and story is something that you're good with, then I think you'll enjoy it. I myself have not seen The Omen, so I'm not saying this from personal experience, but as I said, when I was watching videos and things, people did say that it kind of messed with the lore of The Omen, and I can go into greater detail essentially right now, because I'm about to give you a spoiler warning. So just to wrap up the spoiler-free review, yeah, if you're in for, you know, like a horror movie that's but is visually well done and the acting is good, and, you know, it does have a tense, in the horror movie sort of way, third act, then I think you'll be chill with it. If you expect a little bit more of your horror movies, not that everybody can be Talk to Me, you know, or the OG Conjuring or Hereditary, but if you can appreciate a good horror movie and you kind of do look deeper into the story and those more technical elements, then I don't think that this movie will do it for you. So, spoilers ahead, you have been warned, let's go. Here's the bane of my existence, where I aim to give you a vague plot summary. Okay, let's get going. So we open up with our girl Margaret, and she is on her way to Rome, I believe, and she is going to essentially get the veil, right? She's gonna become a full-fledged nun instead of just I don't know what they're called. Are they called novices? I don't know. Here I am, like, thinking of Wheel of Time. Anyways, whatever nuns must be before they become nuns. She is one of those, and she goes to Rome to this it seems to be kind of a prestigious orphanage amongst the church. At least that's the vibe I got. And she's to take the veil there, and there are only 2 of them taking the veil that year. There's like a conversation about how less and less women take the veil every year, and it happens that, I think her name is Luce, it happens that Luce, the girl who is taking the veil that year as well, is Margaret's roommate. And so Margaret gets there. Pardon me, I've literally only watched this once and it's been about a week or so. Margaret gets there, you know, she's kind of being shown the orphanage. We learn that there's this girl, Carlita, who is kind of kept separate from all the kids. We hear that she like has episodes where she'll harm the other kids, but we don't actually really see that. ever happening, but we do see her kind of like getting dragged away on occasion, which is definitely very sad. And in this orphanage, there is such a thing as a bad room, which don't even get me started on like the parenting no-no that is. Anyways, that is not the video we came here to make. So yes, Margaret learns very quickly that, you know, you kind of just stay away from Carlita and you keep her away from the other girls. Now, Margaret has a soft spot for Carlita because she herself was a sort of quote-quote problem child in her orphanage. She is also an orphan, and she would essentially, you know, have these episodes where she would get aggressive. They would have to tie her to the bed. She imagines that that's probably what's happening with Carlita as well, and she essentially got psychological help, not professionally. It didn't seem like, it seemed like it was more like her faith helped her through it, and like the priests around her helped her through it, which again, I could go on a whole tangent about how like you can't pray mental health problems away, but that is not the video we came to make yet again. Regardless, she's well adjusted now, and you know, she's about to take the veil. It's this very big deal. Now, I forgot to mention in the beginning, we kind of get these like cryptic images. I feel like every horror movie now has to have, you know, especially like of the religious sort, has to have the image of like the hands grabbing at the face, and you know, you get that, and you know, creepy people standing around, and it's a whole thing that I will get to later, but we get glimpses of that in the beginning, and then we get some sort of conversation about how, you know, she's essentially the one, whatever the one means in this universe, and we'll get into that. So yes, Margaret's getting adjusted. She meets her roommate, which is quite unconventional for someone who's going to be taking the veil very soon. Like, she basically comes in like wearing very normal clothes, and even kind of like less modest clothes, which live it up, girl. But you know, very surprising for someone who is about to become a nun. And essentially what Luce tells Margaret is, you know, well, I gotta live a little now because I'm gonna become a nun, and then this version of living for me will not be accessible anymore, right? So anyways, like, Margaret's getting adjusted, yada yada, things happen with Carlita, and then her roommate, Luz, decides, you know, one night that they're going out. And she's like, you know, you gotta get out, you gotta experience something before we do this. And it's not like the day before or anything, but it's just like, it's in the near future, right? Them taking the veil together. And they go out, our girl has a great time, she looks awesome, and she essentially blacks out. Last thing she remembers, she was like making out with this guy, and yeah, but she's in her bed, her clothes are on, you know, all those things. She like gets up, she's obviously hungover. Luce is already, you know, in her habit, is that what it's called? In her uniform, for lack of a better term. And Margaret asks her, like, oh my gosh, like, what happened? And the night before, you know, when Margaret had reservations about going out, Luce was like, oh, you've got to be a very brave girl, and you're a very brave girl, you know, urging her to like go out and live at least for one night, live it up anyways, at least for one night. And so in the morning, in order to answer her question about, you know, what happened in the blackout, basically, Luce just says, let's just say you were a very brave girl, like the bravest girl, something along those lines. So, okay, we can assume that, you know, she had intimate relations with the guy that she was making out with and dancing with the night prior. Okay. Then, you know, we go about our lives, creepy things happen. See, this is my thing, like, the plot isn't even that well strung together that I'm having a hard time like putting the events in order in my brain according to memory. But regardless, creepy things happen. Okay, this priest comes up to her, or this ex-priest, I guess, this excommunicated priest comes up to her, tells her, you know, that bad things are gonna start happening around Carlita. You gotta watch out, you gotta stay away from her, whatever the hell it is. And, you know, at first she's like pushing him away, whatever. But then, lo and behold, you know, this chick Basically, I guess it's a callback to the Omen, but they just went so ham that it was unnecessary. She literally like lights herself on fire and then, jumps, and she had a rope around her neck, and well, y'all know where that ends. And of course it's terrifying, and so yeah, okay, so we keep going, bad things are happening. Let's just get through this. So long story short, Margaret finds out because she talks to this priest, and there's this really annoying info dump where he's telling her that there are two sides of the church, right? There's the side that's for good, and then there's the side that essentially will do anything to get people into the churches and believing in God in the way that they do. And they are willing to essentially create an antichrist in order to make it so people literally need to go to church to be protected or saved or whatever it is. Makes no sense to me either, because like wreaking havoc on the world is not gonna make people just turn towards faith all of a sudden. Like, yeah, that might be the effect that a crisis has on some people, maybe even a lot of people, but that is genuinely no guarantee, and you're just advocating for wreaking havoc on the world willy-nilly. Okay. So yeah, we find out that they've essentially like been doing these experiments for years and years, like decades essentially, maybe even 100 years, I don't know, where they have been trying to breed a human with this male like hellish jackal so that they will have hopefully eventually a child that is essentially human, right? Human in body and mostly soul, it seems like, because Carlita genuinely just seems like a traumatized child. But anyways, the experiments like fail a lot. Margaret finds these files, and this scene was the first time that genuine tension actually occurred. We'll get to that later. She finds these files of all these failed experiments except for two. And one of them is Carlita, and the other one is her. And this is a reveal that happens. And essentially, they do this ritual, this breeding ritual on June 6th, midnight, I guess. I don't know. June 6th. I just remember it has to happen on June 6th, right? Because 6, and then I don't know how we get to the other 6. And essentially what ended up happening, unfortunately for Margaret, is that night that she blacked out, the roommate is in cahoots with like these evil church people, and the guys were like a total ploy and setup, and they actually just took her to the ritual to be, R-worded by the hellish jackal. Rough times for Margaret. And because she was one of the successful experiments, meaning she already has like that jackal DNA, she can actually birth an antichrist that isn't like, a monster. Like monster looking, I should say. That's human looking. So yeah, that sucks. She like figures that out, and she kind of goes a little crazy, and she, ends up birthing. Oh yeah, by the way, Carlita isn't old enough to be able to like bear children, so Margaret got thrown under the bus. And the way that like she comes back, like basically they've been keeping an eye on her, but they like pushed her, to like an orphanage that was super far, and kind of like moved her around enough for like people not to know that like there was another successful experiment. That's how they were able to like guarantee that, because Carlita wasn't old enough. So yeah, Margaret. So she ends up birthing the babies. It ends up being twins, a boy and a girl. And the church people are there. It's all very creepy. And then basically like they're about to like set fire to everything, and Carlita ends up like coming in like a badass and like urging Margaret to leave. And of course Margaret grabs the baby girl because they don't take the boy, they only take the boy. And then, you know, they show kind of like in the very last moment, the jackal, like, you know, it essentially that has, like, you know, erupted into flames because they poured accelerant everywhere and lit the place aflame. Or I think they poured accelerant. I think that it just wouldn't make sense for it to catch fire that fast, but I don't know. And apparently this is kind of like how they changed the lore, because from what I learned from Omen fans, or at least people who have seen the Omen, is that in the Omen it's a female jackal who births the Antichrist, whereas in this one, which it's like supposed to be the same universe, but are they trying to do like an alternate universe? I don't know. Because in this one, it's a human who births the Antichrist, but it's, you know, R-worded by a hellish jackal. Male hellish jackal. Which I think makes more sense, but regardless, messes with the lore. And yeah, anyways, they escape, and then, you know, years later, they're like in some secluded place, and the same priest that initially warned her is coming back to warn her again, and she's very hostile, even though, like, he literally only ever helped her out. Yeah, don't get that. We'll get to that though in the critique part. And he tells her, you know, in this very goofy last moment, that the Antichrist that she birthed, the name is Damien, and of course we know that because the Omen. And he says something about, like, the girl being important, even though, again, the girl didn't exist in the original Omen from my understanding. So anyways, that's the movie. Ooh, I think I did really well on that vague plot summary. That might be one of my best to date, and I will actually attribute it to the fact that this plot was so loosely strung together that there was no through line for me to really follow, except for, like, here's the beginning. I guess this is the middle of the climax. I don't know. And then this is the end. Like, hell if I know, for real. But let's just go ahead and get into the critique portion of this, now that you know what is going on. For those of you that have not seen it, you can get just like a general picture, okay? Okay, here we go. Let's start with the good. Let's just begin with the good. Like I said in my spoiler-free review, the cinematography and the acting were very well done. I appreciated it. The cinematography was very reminiscent of older horror films, you know, less of the consistently cutting back and forth on the medium close-ups, I should say, and more, you know, taking advantage of like two shots where there are two people in a scene, two people being filmed at the same time, I should say, in a scene. They really played with visuals, which I know seems redundant because ideally every movie and show would play with visuals, but there is an art to playing with visuals. Like, you can just light something, you know, in a very utilitarian way, or you can or you can use light in a more artistic way, and I definitely feel like they did that. I do appreciate the actual, like, light and shadow contrasts that you see. I feel like in a lot of the horror movies nowadays, they'll do that thing where they film the scenes with like a lot of light, and then in post-production they will go and reduce that, and it just kind of gives this vibe of, like, essentially like Game of Thrones towards the end, in those really dark scenes, not dark in subject matter, just literally dark scenes. Like, your TV is on the highest, like, brightness setting, and you still cannot see shit for the life of you. So it kind of gives that effect when they do that, and I definitely feel like the first Omen didn't do that. I really appreciate the fact that they actually used lighting in a very dynamic way, and I appreciated it. The cinematography, the visuals, that was well done. Some of the special effects weren't my favorite, but I will give it to them. Like, there was a point where our girl Margaret essentially saw, like, one of the, you know, presumably one of the nuns, like, give birth to, like, a claw, which creepy. That was very creepy and definitely made me go like this. So the special effects on that one must have been decent. But yeah, I don't know, like the jackal at the end, a flame, it just looked a little like we would have benefited more from not seeing it, but rather maybe like hearing it let out, like, you know, an agonizing shriek, that kind of thing. The acting, as I said, well done. People were committing. I really appreciate that. The costumes were, I mean, you know, they were mostly what nuns and priests wear, with occasionally we do see, you know, civilians out in the wild. And it took place, I believe, was it the 60s? The 60s, I feel like it took place, or early 70s. And yeah, it felt that way. So I appreciated that. The set design was good as well. I did appreciate that. I do feel like set design is like, you always, if you notice something off, you know, it's one of those things that like typically you don't notice set design. And I do appreciate the way that it was just done. It was very much done in a way where like I felt like we were in the time period. I felt like we were in the orphanage. I felt like, you know, we were in each of our respective locations and whatnot. I feel like it was essentially just enough. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like the set design in horror movies can either be like too bare or essentially too noticeable in a not a good way. And in this case, I feel like they struck a good balance. So essentially all the visuals were really good. I will rave. The actors were committed, and I will always appreciate that. That was the good. Okay. Let us get to the not so good. The not my favorite. The story feels very awkwardly paced, okay? And the pacing of a horror movie is just very important because it can help build tension. And as I've kind of watched more horror movies, and my brain just kind of naturally does this thing where it wants to figure out how things work, and apparently one of my greatest joys, hence this YouTube channel and my podcast, is figuring out how good stories are made and are written and sort of flow. And horror movies have a very specific kind of like, not necessarily specific as in, you know, you have to do what other horror movies have done before, but essentially horror movies are such a specific genre that they do have like a kind of precedent. And the movies that have come before kind of like set us up for what to expect, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. And something that I feel I've become very conscious of in, I would say definitely this year that I can recall, but I've kind of been like tiptoeing around being aware of this for quite some time now, is the fact that a really good horror movie knows how to build tension. If you've seen my Veronica commentary, I literally put on the thumbnail, Paco Plaza knows how to build tension. That's the director of Veronica, and he really does. Like that movie, it almost doesn't even need to rely on it, or rather it doesn't rely on the, you know, horror movie conventions that it uses, and instead, if it doesn't subvert them, it just uses them so masterfully that you don't notice the fact that they're using a jump scare or, you know, a quiet moment to extend the tension, right? To give you that moment before the jump scare. You're not noticing that they're doing these things because you're just so in it, because the devices are being used so masterfully, because the story in and of itself already has tension within it. Essentially what I'm trying to say is, when you're reading the script, you should feel the tension. And 2/3 of this movie, just about, were literally void of tension. Like, I realized that one of the easiest ways to build tension is to create fear within the character that we're following. And our girl Margaret really didn't have much to be afraid of until much too late in the film. And by the time we got to that point, I was already kind of so annoyed by the pacing, so annoyed by the lack of tension, annoyed by the fact that instead of getting exposition in that sort of like horror movie Easter eggy sneaky kind of way, we were just kind of getting it info dumped to us, that I just couldn't. Sometimes my reptile moves around, and yeah, anyways, she should be waking up right about now. Anyways, so as I was saying, by the time we got to the point where it got tense, I just really didn't care very much anymore. Give me a second. Okay. I just remembered the Omen sets have been haunted, and so I just said a little bit of a protection spell here because I don't believe that anything is going on in my apartment. I keep a very homey and light space, but you know, as a proper witch, I'm just covering my bases, realizing I didn't set that before. Although I did do a Tales of the Shire reaction prior to this, which I feel like definitely cleansed all the energy in here because there was enough joy in here to fill a ballroom. Anyhow, let's get back to it. Yes, okay. Really didn't feel like there was genuine tension coming from the script itself, and that kind of just translated throughout the movie. Instead of having the tension build from the script and having these horror movie conventions like fill out the tension and enhance the tension, we just kind of had these conventions happening but not really amounting to much because there wasn't actual tension coming from the story of it in and of itself. The goofy, heavy-handed ending really was just that, goofy and heavy-handed. We don't need to end with his name is Damien, like we know that that's what's coming. I feel like any other way that they could have done that would have probably been less cheesy. Really didn't make any sense to me why Margaret was so hostile towards the priest who literally had only ever helped her out. Like, she keeps like cocking her gun over and over at him, and I'm like, girl, he is not your enemy. Anyways, I didn't appreciate the fact that there were moments happening just for drama or effect, as opposed to because they just enhance the story. Some examples of this would be, like I said earlier, the nun who, decided to unalive herself but also set herself on fire. Like, that was really intense. We really didn't need the fire, but okay, they just wanted to up it and, give us more drama, but literally just her deciding to, take her own life right there in front of everybody right after that guy said that bad things were gonna start happening. That would have been entirely enough. Okay, so Margaret would have gone to find him anyway. The pregnancy horror was just a little bit, or the pregnancy horror and gore, I should say, was just a little bit much for me. I feel like it could have been done a lot more tactfully and tastefully, and not so much for spectacle. So didn't appreciate that. I genuinely feel like car crashes were a common occurrence in this film, which just genuinely made them really another car crash. Use one for dramatic effect and then leave car crashes alone. Those strategies don't work if they are used over and over again, or rather those kinds of events and conflicts. Okay, I said I was gonna get to this. Seeing essentially the flashes of images that we saw in the beginning was the ritual that was done to Margaret to impregnate her. But I think they were being done to a different person in the beginning when we were getting flashes of it. And my thing is this: I feel that it is unnecessary to show the flashes in the beginning if we're just gonna show Margaret remembering anyway later. So that's my thought on that. I feel like we wasted time with that. In conclusion, I can see why people are enjoying the film. It's not like a bad film. It's more of like a meh film, in my opinion. It is beautifully shot. The cinematography, as I said, is very well done. I do understand that it feels very reminiscent of kind of like older horror films, and I feel like that definitely endears people to it. However, when you go past those elements, as well as, you know, the more than sufficient acting, when you go past those elements to the actual story and to whether tension is genuinely coming from the story or if it's essentially just trying to happen via these horror movie conventions that we're so used to, you realize that it really ultimately doesn't work. And like I said, I had a hard time recalling the plot. Like, part of why the plot description, the vague plot description, is the bane of my existence is because typically I have just way too much to say because I want to tell you every little thing that happens, especially when the reviews are positive, when the commentary is positive overall. And I've realized just now, because I had to give this vague plot description and realizing just how difficult it is to like remember things in chronological order in my brain because this movie felt so haphazard in the way that it was strung together plot-wise, is that the movies that I tend to have a hard time being vague with the plot description are the movies where the plot, it genuinely feels like nearly everything that happens in the plot has such a concrete purpose and like such a reason, like a unanimously necessary reason for being there. And I genuinely feel like there was a lot of things in this plot that could have been changed, or, you know, a couple of things could have been meshed together, or this thing could have been revealed in a different way, and this could have been done away with altogether. Like, I just feel like there was a lot of work to do on this film, story-wise, and it just kind of didn't work for me. I also feel like it was kind of a weird move to release it so close to Immaculate, because I genuinely feel like they're just so close to being the same movie without one, you know, having the Omen behind it. And by the way, I did find Immaculate quite overhyped. I didn't end up making a video about that because I felt like the discourse online was kind of balanced. But if you want that video, I guess let me know in the comments. But essentially, yeah, this is all I got for you. Really wasn't my jam. But hey, you might enjoy it. Who knows? Like I said, it wasn't a bad movie. It was just kind of meh for me. Thank you for watching, by the way. If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider clicking the bell, because I do post regularly, but I don't post on a schedule. I've been posting a lot of trailer reactions lately. They do pop up rather suddenly. And I try to be pretty on time with them, especially because they help me stay present with the channel while I'm working on the reviews, which obviously take more time. But thank you for being here. You could also consider liking the video. That pushes the video out in the algorithm, helps more people see it, helps me get closer to realizing my dream of becoming a full-time content creator. I would very much appreciate that. Please consider commenting. We can comment the little like purple devil emoji, the little smile. I think that'd be cute. Or I guess you could comment the angel emoji too, right? Because there are two sides of the church in this universe. So I guess comment whichever one you want. I will not judge you based on which one you comment. This is just for funsies. You can also find me on social media. I'm at Embodying Mystical Mac, and I have a music account called @MacInTheMusic. If you have any suggestions for the next mini cover that I should post on there, comment that down below. And if you are so inclined, you can check out ways to support the channel in the description down below as well. I'm very grateful for you. Thank you for checking out this impromptu commentary that I was not going to make on the first Omen. If you have seen the first Omen and you have some thoughts, please share them respectfully down in the comment section below. And yeah, I'm just grateful that you're here, and I will catch you very soon. No, but for real, like, sometimes when the air pressure changes, like one of my cabinets will it's like closed like this and then it'll close all the way, and that's probably what that sound was, although It is true that my reptile occasionally makes sounds like that too, but I just literally had a moment where I was like, Mac, you literally said a protection spell when you talked about Veronica. Why did you not think of doing it for the movie where the sets are haunted? Anyway, I got to it. We're good, and I'll catch you soon.